When you're starting your podcast or launching your podcast, or maybe you've had your podcast going on for 6 months, a year, longer, 3 months in, a weekend, no matter what it might be, whether you're having guests on your podcast or whether you're doing solo episodes, you're gonna want to make sure that you plan your episodes. Now, you may be wondering, how do I plan my episodes successfully? So, there's a couple ways that I go about it. So, one, I want to go over if you're having guests on your show. And then two, I want to go over if you're having solo episodes. The first being, let's say that you want to have guests on your show. When you want to have guests on your show, what questions are you going to be asking them? What do you want to talk about? What I do with this is I'll go through, I'll take a look at the person's website, I'll take a look at their background, their biography, and right from then and there, I'll have like probably 5 questions pop into my head that I want to ask them. I'll go back through, I'll see previous podcast interviews that they've done. I'll see what questions we're asking them there. I might be, oh, that's a very interesting question that they got asked. I want to ask them myself so I can dig into it a little deeper. So I find that I like to spend 30 minutes to an hour prepping of just going over the different questions that I'm going to be asking the podcast guest that's coming on to my show. Sometimes if they come on and it's very standard, let's say it's a multifamily investor for our real estate podcast, I feel as though I know enough about multifamily where I want to ask them the particular market, how have they been affected, what does their typical cash flow year one look like, what does their value strategy look like, what locations are they buying in, the typical questions. But when I'm interviewing someone different per se, like I was interviewing someone in the mobile home park space, I haven't interviewed someone in the mobile home park space before. It's an asset class that I'm interested in investing in. And with this particular individual, I wanted to know more about, okay, like, do you own the mobile homes themselves or do you just own the land that they're under? What size lot size do you buy? Are there typical classes? Like when you have your multifamily properties, you typically have your class A, B, and C properties depending on location and what the property looks like. What does the cash flow look like on a mobile home park? So by going through his website, I started to get different ideas. How expensive are these mobile homes if you are buying them and then you're renting it out? Or are they tenant owned? Do you use public utilities? Do you use private utilities? And this just came up by doing my research because I was like, I'm having this gentleman on my show and I want to know everything I can about mobile home parks because I want to potentially invest in mobile home parks. I'm going to use this opportunity to learn as much as I can from this individual. And that's how I planned the episode. Now, when it comes to planning my own content and what I'm going to be talking about, I could sit down and I could think of everything that I've learned in the podcasting space over the last 9 years. But at the same time, it's like, what is going to be very helpful for the audience? And honestly, I do two things. I go on Answer the Public, and with Answer the Public, I type in like podcasting, podcast guesting, podcast hosting, podcast interviewing, and it just gives me all these different topics that people are talking about in the podcasting space or need help answering. So someone, as an example, might put, how do I plan my podcast episodes? I see someone search for that. Well, I'm talking today about how you should plan your episodes. And then from there, I also will look at YouTube itself. And I'll type in podcasting, podcast guesting, podcast hosting, see what the top videos are, see what the top pieces of content are. Now, I never want to copy anyone ever based on their title or what they're doing. I want to make it unique to my own and to my own story and the advice that I can share, but it helps to give me some ideas. Now that I have these ideas down, I'll basically go on my computer, I'll use Google Drive, I'll go on a Google Doc, I'll put the title, say for this one, it's all about how to plan your podcast episode. And now that I'm teaching you how to plan your podcast episode, then I write down, okay, here's step one I want to teach on the video, or on the podcast video, however you may be consuming it. That's step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And that's just how I set it up. So when I'm going out there and I'm recording, I know everything that I want to cover instead of me just hopping right into the video, which I have definitely done before. But then a lot of the times I'll come up and I'll say, and hesitate, trying to think about what I'm trying to get through. So you really just want to make sure that you plan your podcast episodes in advance, because the more that you plan your episodes in advance, the better overall the podcast experience is going to be, not only for yourself, but also for your guest.